Hello, everybody. This is Abena. I'm going to put the screen on to see some actual live people here. Um, hey, there you go. This is Owen.
Hi everyone.
So thanks for joining us for our first free webinar, which is focused on the successful habits that doctors possess that do manage to successfully transition into alternative careers. This is a really interesting and topical area, considering that we are Medic Footprints and this is what we do. Before I go into that, I just want to get yourself familiar with some of the tech involved in this. So if you have any questions as we go along, please just type in a question. We're going to keep everyone muted because there is a lot of people on this webinar, so it will be pandemonium if we get people speaking. That's number one thing. So there's a question box, so we will keep an eye on that as we go along. The other bit is we are recording this for the benefit of those that couldn't make it today. So if you have any issues with that afterwards, please let us know. But this is completely anonymous and no one knows that you are here. Any other points to make?
No, other than to say it's great to be with you, and we hope you find this webinar really useful and helpful in your search for an alternative career. That's what we're doing.
Okay, so now you've seen us, and we're going to go because we're going to focus on the slideshows, which will be awesome. So let me just turn that off here and focusing on that. Right, so feel free to ask questions as we go along. As I mentioned, I'm Abena. I'm the founder of Medic Footprints, which I started 3 years ago. The main reason I started it was because I graduated 2006. I went into surgical training, got to a point in my career I was like, there must be more to life than this. Ended up going to South Africa, no ties, I promise you, and worked in trauma surgery for nearly 2 years. And those were the best 2 professional years of my life, hands down. My experience was beyond what I actually went out there to do, which was really to develop my skills as a surgeon. But I learned a lot more in the way of the public healthcare in a different system, was more autonomous, and learned very quickly and met some really awesome people. And so I felt the guilt, came back to the UK, ended up in Blackburn, and being a London-born girl, it was like, what am I doing here? And then realized I think I need to do something that's beyond conventional clinical medicine. So that's how Medic Footprints essentially was started. And in the last, well, it's been 3 years now, it's grown into this massive organization of doctors sharing ideas and their journeys in order to empower each other in really designing careers that we love. So just to quickly go through the structure of this webinar. So me talking, I don't like talking for too long, so that's going to be a maximum of 40 minutes, and obviously Owen will be joining us with that. So we're going to start with a short intro into what the Alternative Careers event is about. Then we will be going into mainly talking about the common mistakes that doctors make when they transition, followed by some really interesting case studies of doctors that I personally know that I feel exemplify alternative careers, and finalising with what recruiters like to see in people that are going into non-clinical roles. And then we'll dedicate 20 minutes to your questions. So these are questions that you put to us here, and also questions that you have submitted already when you registered for this event, and that we've already had some really, really interesting, very common and diverse questions, so we'll go through that too. Owen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll keep it short and sweet. So I've just finished a role with a small consultancy. I'm not a medic. I'm a mediator by training, so it's involved in conflict resolution within organisations. Done a lot of work within the NHS, helping your colleagues to resolve conflict effectively, informally. And so I've just finished working at a consultancy where I became the acting managing director with responsibility for the day-to-day of commercial operations of the organisation. And prior to that, I spent 2 years working in the city for a corporate recruiter. So I was recruiting finance and accountancy professionals. So I was recruiting a lot of people every month, meeting a lot of candidates every week. So that's what I've been doing when I first started my career for a couple of years in the city. So I hope all those things come together, and I can offer you a few tips about how to be really effective in your search.
Okay, just a general overview of what Medic Footprints do. So we are a community-led organisation led by doctors. We run networking events. We run an annual conference. We recruit. We advertise for non-clinical roles, and we have a lot of content, case studies, articles, you name it. And it's a massive resource of information for doctors who are looking for something a little bit different. So the Alternative Careers event is something that we run annually, and it's a large conference, up to 350 people. And I was just actually trying to change my slides, which is not working. Hold on. Okay, there you go. So these are the people that are responsible for the event this year. So most of these people are doctors, medical students, come from really diverse backgrounds. They've all gravitated towards Medic Footprints because of what our ethos is. It's basically ensuring that doctors are happy in what they do. And I can tell you now, the event is a lot of work. It's a huge challenge for us, but it's completely worth it because it really does change lives. So we hold it at the Grand Connaught Rooms every year. So this is a picture from last year, kind of full house there. And you know, the well-being element is huge, and we'll talk about that later on. So, so my first question to you as participants are, what is an alternative career? So I think that means something different for a lot of people. So if you could type in the box, is there a chat in the chat box or in the question box, what is your definition of an alternative career? I mean, what's your definition, Owen?
I think it's any career, and I would say in my own way I have pursued an alternative career, is anything that's slightly different from what you had in mind, perhaps when you first started on building your career. Anything that you might have predicted, thinking outside the box. So if you're a doctor, it might be management consultancy. For me, I started working in a commercial role. I knew I wanted to get into mediation and conflict resolution. That was my alternative career. And it's not just one of them as well. We know there have been many alternative careers often in the course of our working lives. So that's my definition.
Okay, awesome. I would say that my definition of an alternative career is something that is beyond what we already know. So that's usually hospital medicine, general practice. So that would also include the lesser known specialties, such as occupational medicine is what I do, and rehab medicine, audiological medicine, and I think is another one. But anything that is not commonly pursued by your kind of average doctor, I suppose. So nobody else has any suggestions for that, so we're going to move on swiftly. We've got a lot to cover. So, a poll. So we want to know more about you guys at the moment that are listening. So I'm going to launch a poll, which is asking the question, where are you in your alternative journey? So you launch the poll. So would you mind just answering this question? So where are you in your alternative career journey at the moment?
So we're going to give you sort of 10 seconds for this, 10 seconds only, all right? Okay, good results are coming in. 5, 4, 3, 75%, 2, 1.
Yeah, come on, get to 100. Oh, 6% to go. Someone's, oh, nearly there. Okay, good. I'm just going to close it now. We're nearly got there, and I'm happy with 97%. Okay.
One person just about.
So, 53% of you said that you're fully in a conventional career. So that's interesting. 20% of you, I'm dabbling in a few things on the side. 17%, I've got a portfolio career. Good for you. And 10%, I'm living the full alternative career. So that's really great to know, just so we can tailor this talk. So if you switch off at any point in this next hour, there's only one thing I want you to remember. So it's not this really cheesy film that was set in the 90s, including Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones, which is apparently really sexy. It's about the term entrapment. I was just having a conversation with one of the case study doctors that we'll go through, and I think one of the main issues with doctors who are considering or even transitioning to alternative careers, the main barrier for them is entrapment, and that is self-entrapment. As doctors, we have become institutionalized into a certain way of thinking, and we do create barriers and obstacles for ourselves that essentially prevent us from doing what we really would want to do. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. So if you don't remember anything that I've said, remember entrapment. So if you want to succeed as a doctor in any alternative career, the most important thing you need to remember is mindset. So we're going to go through a few of the common mistakes that doctors do make in their alternative career journey. So I'm going to whiz through this if you've got time to stay. Not doing the work on themselves. So what exactly does that mean? It means that I see a lot of doctors who are stressed, depressed, have other health issues, or essentially in denial, or they're lost and they're really looking for an answer and someone essentially to tell them what to do. And at that stage, I advise that this is the worst time for them to be jumping into something else, because it's likely they'd make the same mistakes again. They really need to take that space and that time and get the support that they need, whether that's health, like mental health support, whether that's a career coach, whether that's essentially just talking to friends and family who are there to support them rather than telling them what to do. And that's hugely important in whether you will be successful moving forward. And as you know, that's why well-being is in the core of what we do as at Medic Footprints. Waiting too long to do anything about it. So this is extremely common. I get asked questions about, is it too early? Is it too late? When do I start? The answer is you start now. Now is the right time. If you're thinking about it, if you're kind of itching to do something, now is the right time. The worst thing you can do is waiting till it's too, in inverted commas, late. Late means usually what I see is a doctor's at crisis point, and sometimes you can't even put your finger on it. So always start planning and exploring. Using money as a guide to their next career step over their passions. Do you have any experience in this in the non-clinical world, Owen?
How do you mean exactly?
So I've come across a lot of doctors. We actually had a question saying, what alternative careers would maintain the same level of income or better? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you've got to think about what's important to you. Now, this is obviously a big area. We haven't got time to go into lots of things. I think it's very important to think of several areas in your search. Now, one, of course, is values. I think if you were to look at just the money side alone, I would advise against that, because I think that can be deceptive. I think you need to always start from a place of what are my values, and there's a whole webinar and many workshops in that issue alone. But I'd say think about, to what extent is income and lifestyle one of the key drivers? For some people, it's non-negotiable, absolutely critical. For others, actually, it's something they're really prepared to be flexible on in the name of doing something that brings them more meaning, more fulfillment. Yeah. So I think it's about really taking the time to identify what are my key drivers. Don't be naive in thinking that money doesn't matter, of course, because I think it does matter. For the vast majority of us, that's okay, that's legitimate. But I would say don't let money be the only guide, as attractive as that may seem when you're looking at different roles and sort of nice paychecks being dangled in front of you. Start from the place of values and then incorporate money as you go.
I think it's very easy to be trapped in the money issue, and I think it's really important to realize as doctors that wherever you do go, money is important. But you have to be prepared to potentially take a pay cut or even save up to actually take some time out. But then the benefits are usually sky's the limit, and career progression is quick compared to in conventional medicine. So I would really, really recommend, do not use money as a guide to your next career step. Really focus on what you want to do, your passion, and then work out, further down the line how to monetize that to a level that you're happy with. Okay, so next one is not understanding the high value of their transferable skills. So I don't know if anyone knows what transferable skill is. Tell us, Owen.
Well, a skill essentially that you can transfer to different elements. So, for example, you might have a very sort of technical skill set in some area, and rather than using that technical skill set in a particular medical function environment, you might then take that into, say, I know you become a logistician, and suddenly your technical skill set becomes very useful in moving products around the world, for example, as opposed to being the operator room. That's a It's a very simplistic example. Anything that's transferable. I just encourage you to be really imaginative. It's amazing. The tools that you train from one area can be used in totally different yet complementary areas. Do not underestimate.
So from a medic perspective, you think about your teamwork, your leadership, your organization. You can learn quickly, you can adapt. You've got communication skills. It's listening, written and verbal, research, personal development, and IT. And that is just me getting started on the list of stuff that doctors can use to, and the most important thing is being able to articulate that to your next recruiter, boss, you name it. Or if you're looking to be self-employed, have an idea of what you can already do, and really break it down and then use it to whatever's relevant to what you want to do. Failing to understand the value of networking. So networking, I find, tends to be seen as a bit of a dirty word in our networks. Well, in the medical world, I should say. I think we're used to attending seminars and conferences with the same specialty or type of people. So when you're actually looking to go into another career, I would say networking is one of the probably most used and most effective ways of getting your next job or securing and succeeding in your next career. And it is about the longer term relationships. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Owen?
So Abhay and I have had some really interesting discussions on the nature of networking. And I agree, if there's anyone out there who thinks that it can feel a bit soulless, I agree. I've literally just come back from a conference I was at today very quickly. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't find the conference that helpful. But you know what, I was sitting next to two people. And in one of the breakout sessions, we were just invited to talk and get to know each other. And I came away thinking the conversations I had with those two were the most interesting part of the whole event. And I don't know where it's going to lead, but my experience has been it's about building quality relationships. So if networking feels a bit empty, I understand where you're coming from. I'd reframe it in your mind as about building quality relationships, and you never know where those will lead.
Thank you, Anne. And that's what Medic Footprints, that's why we run networking events, and that's why we run this conference. It's not so much about the content, even though that is important, it's more about the people that we get into the room, because that wealth of opportunity and knowledge is what will help you succeed in whatever you really want to do. So having that inspiration and that support network. So the next one is thinking that they need to have completed their training or develop a whole range of qualifications or finish FY2, ST3, you name it, to be of any value to anything. So I would say that as doctors, we tend to be qualification junkies, and I think you know what I mean. I mean, I can safely say that I am a qualification junkie. You know, and you were saying about all the letters after my name.
There's a lot of them.
There is. It's longer than the alphabet, I think. But I think you need to be aware that if you really want to succeed, it's not so much about what your qualifications are, it's about how you market yourself. And I'm just going to use the wellness industry as an example of this. You know, there's talk about everyone and anyone getting into wellness, and very, very few of these people have specific qualifications in well-being and wellness, yet they are very, very successful. And I think that's just an example of not needing to be specifically qualified in something unless it's a very, very, very niche or very specific requirement for a job like medicine. But beyond that, you've got to really think about, you know, if you want to go into something, do you really need to do that master's? Do you really need to do that MBA and spend tens and thousands of pounds? Have a real think to see what the real value is to you. And finally, not preparing to explore beyond what they already know. So we're going to go more into that in our case studies. So my next question is, how many of you have made any of these mistakes? And if so, which one? So we, how do we go into manage polls? No, that's not the right one. Let's go back. So how do we get to the next part, Aaron? Okay, so what mistakes have you made, if you've made any of these? So we're going to launch a poll. And let's get everyone voting again.
You've got 10 seconds. So, which mistakes have you made in your career journey? Don't be embarrassed. I know I've made my fair share. So
we've all made mistakes.
Several answers here. Not seeking support, waiting too long to do anything about it, getting caught up in qualification/training goals posts, not knowing how to communicate your transferable skills, and finally, not using networking as a career development strategy. So here we go. 5 seconds left.
Come on, let's try and get it to 100%.
3, 2, 86%. Go on. 1.5. Go on, I dare you.
Don't sit on the fence. Choose one or more of the following.
1 final second left.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So the most popular is actually waiting too long to do anything about it, and I can safely testify to that one. How about you?
Yeah, definitely.
Which one do you identify most with from your history?
I think probably waiting too long to do anything about it. For me, I'm a great researcher in opportunity. I'm less good at making decisions about it, and that can be crippling. So we've got 63% of you said waiting too long to do anything about it. 57% said not seeking support. 53% said not knowing how to communicate your whatever the other one was. 50% was not using your networking as a career development tool. And 40% said getting caught up in the qualifications. So really interesting. Thank you for that.
Okay, well, let's move on to some of these successful habits that these doctors have. So, beautiful picture. So my first case study is a guy that I know quite well. I knew him as the president of the Association for Surgeons in Training. And then one day he showed up at one of our networking events, and I was like, wait, hold on, is this the person I think it is? Because for me, he was like a celebrity. And he was like, yeah, it is. And it turns out that he'd been working for Lifebox, which is a charity which is focused on safer surgery and anesthesia. And he himself, even though he lived and breathed the surgical life, was looking for other options, and he was a registrar at the time. So his chief executive of the Lifebox actually introduced him to his current boss, who I'll tell you more about, and who worked for the All-Party Parliamentary Group. And then, fast forward a few years later, this person had been networking, and he'd also been applying for some management consultancy posts from a background in surgery. And then he actually went for a job at KPMG. And at that time, he met the person that he was introduced to, which helped to have him on the panel, who is now his boss. So this is Edward Fitzgerald. I don't know if anyone knows Ed Fitzgerald. And he is currently the Global Health Executive to the Health Practice Global Chairman. So he works at KPMG. He's literally on a plane 24/7, but he really enjoys what he's doing, which is really influencing global healthcare internationally. So his kind of points are, he really leveraged the networking opportunities. He sustained and maintained those long-term relationships, and he said, for the purpose of this webinar, do not be afraid to put yourself forward. Do not be afraid to ask for introductions. Do not be afraid to ask for help. And interestingly enough, Ed was literally a year away from his CCT, having taken out about 3 UPs, and he did not finish his training. And he chose not to, and he's not going to go back. So that's just an example of someone that actually decided, I'd actually prefer to go down the non-clinical route and do this rather than finish my training. So he's left the program. But that's a decision that he's made and very, very happy with. So, yeah. So that's Ed. So my next case study, this is for illustration purposes only, I have to say. So this young lady I actually worked with in 2008 when I was in Maidstone Hospital. Don't know if anyone has worked there. She was my FY2 and I was a core surgical trainee.
Just to be clear, that's not Maidstone.
That's not Maidstone, it's New Zealand. And I remember at the time she was learning French and she came with all these verbs and all that stuff. And I was like, a bit crazy, but hey, you're cool. And she told me that she was going to go to Paris and I think do an MSc in neuroscience. And so, as we move on from our jobs, did not hear from her for quite a while. And then she popped up literally about 2-3 years ago now with her property investment for doctors. business. And I was like, wow, Lafina, I've just told you her name. I said, Lafina, what's happening? And it turns out that since I'd last seen her, she'd gone back to pediatrics. She spent a year in there, decided that she wasn't really happy in pediatrics, and then moved to Spain, started a property investment career, which is something that she literally fell into, and eventually decided she wanted to go back into GP training. At the same time, she started Eureka Doc, which is a medical education company that really focuses on alternative careers. So the learning points from Dr. Lafina Diamandis's journey is that she was willing to explore beyond boundaries. She wasn't afraid to be different, and she had an experimental mindset, so she tried a lot of things, and she found several things that worked for her. Yeah, despite that, she still wanted to go back into clinical practice, which she is now doing full time, and I'm not sure how she's doing it and balancing all the other stuff. But she's motivated, she's dedicated, and she's there. So just realize, your pathway may be different from the next person's pathway, and don't be afraid to create what you think works for you. And you may not get it right the first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, and that's normal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is someone I spoke to actually recently. She is so inspirational. So Dimple, she came from pediatrics, but before that she had quite a creative history. Really wanted to be a filmmaker, but went into medicine like a lot of us do. Subsequently realized that she was living someone else's dream. She wasn't really getting her creative fix, and she ended up going into kind of management consultancy, where she worked for about 3 of the big 3, I think, at which time she realized that she had some space for herself to decide. She was working at Gosh at the time, and that's Great Ormond Street, so quite a tertiary referral hospital, but she realized, actually, this isn't for me, and I really want to focus on something that I know that I love and make my career work for me. And she had that niggling inner voice that was saying, this isn't for you, really. You're doing really well, but this isn't for you. So she decided to change into GP training, and she is now a GP. She also finished a master's in psychology, and she now is a coach for a lot of people at the Faculty of Medical and Leadership Management, and she is a TEDx speaker, and she is an award-winning iPhone filmmaker. And I think I'm not sure what more I can say about her. And she's a prime example of someone that really listened to her inner voice and used her passions to build a career that she genuinely loves. And having spoken to her, like the previous case, she said, don't be afraid to be different from the crowd. Everyone is born different, and their journeys are different, but don't be afraid to embrace that. Another thing is, don't make excuses for yourself. So I know a lot of people, particularly in the older group, are a bit concerned about their mortgages, their children, their commitments. But like most things, that is an excuse, and there's always a way around that if you really want to seek some true happiness in your life. And so invest your time in these things, and it's never too late, it's never too early to start. Spend a little bit of time every day on what you would really love to do for your career, and you don't have to kind of jump out the next day. It's something that you can work on gradually, like a lot of us have done. So yeah, follow your passions. So this guy is actually one of my first main inspirations when I was still a urology registrar, whom I met actually, several years ago. So it turns out he was living like a double life. Having had a conversation with him, he really kept this quiet. It turned out he was an international fashion magazine media mogul. And he was one of our first networking events, and back in 2015, I think it was. And apart from urology, he would essentially I think he bought and he set up and he sold 2 papers. He'd spend like weekends in Milan doing photo shoots, DJing, and then flying back to do his on calls. He worked full time the whole time. He's got 3 children. And yeah, he was doing this. And I said, how the hell did you manage to do this? And he said, well, actually, there's a lot of planning involved, but it was about his support systems that was the most important aspect of that. So this is Tep Yap. He's a consultant urologist at George's. He's also one of the founders of Glass magazine. He's the guy on the right, the furthest of the right, looking a little bit coy there. And yeah, he has to be coy because, you know, he was full-time registrar and pretty much full-time consultant and still running some really important, you know, very influential in the fashion world, and essentially living a double life. And he had to keep it quiet as a registrar because when he first applied for urology training, he didn't get it because he mentioned what he did, and they said, well, you're not committed to the specialty. So yeah, and so he ended up doing an MD for a couple of years, continuing his passions, went back, did not mention about his other side, of the dark side, and continued to work full-time as a registrar, finished his training, was actually took some leadership roles with the British Association of Urological Surgeons, and the reason why I did that is that he wanted to remain credible and, you know, really prove that he is really dedicated to urology, and he definitely is. So I think the moral of the story is you can have more than one passion, but the most important thing is get that support to really help you do that. So for him, it was his family, it was his wife, and also the team that he had running these magazines. So let's just go see what we got. So these people in the middle, so that's Stephanie and Schumann. I don't know if anyone knows who they are, but they are orthopedic regs who essentially kind of came up with an idea because Stephanie had some medical issues. She looked for some help. As a medic, she could not find it, which is shocking in itself, because there wasn't really any information about where to find a specialist online. So with that idea born, they created Doctify. That did not happen overnight. So that involved, because I mean, Doctify, it's a health tech startup, but neither of these doctors knew any tech whatsoever. They managed to find a founder who is someone who has run a business before quite successfully and has grown a team and has subsequently raised millions and millions of pounds and has quite a large team now based in London, both of whom are now on outer programs, still considering going back to clinical practice, but you know, they have teams of like 30 people now and, you know, doing very, very well. And so as an example, they've used their transferable skills, communication, because in that picture, I'll go back to the picture, they're actually at Pitcher Palace. I don't know if anyone's heard of Pitcher Palace, but basically they won the People's Award for that. So that involves pitching for a few minutes on their idea and you know, why they should be chosen, and they won. So that was fantastic for them. So yeah, and I've just got a bonus one. So we're nearing the end of my talk. So Rupi, I met a few years ago. He actually came to one of our networking events, and he's done really well for himself. So he had a chronic health problem that he overcame by changing his diet, and as a consequence of that, he started blogging. And then with the blogging, he grew a lot of attention. He was invited to a few events, which he went to across the country, and then the media got interested. And then, as far as I know, his life involves traveling from Australia and back, blogging, vlogging, you name it, and he's a massive ambassador for kind of functional stroke lifestyle medicine. So yeah, he's done really well for himself, and he's someone I highly respect. He's the nicest guy you will ever meet. So I would say the learning point from Rupi, I actually asked him this, I saw him on Saturday at our Wellness Medics event, and he said, you know, do stuff for free, write for free, speak for free, travel the UK and the world for free, but eventually the money will come to you. So he's someone that I would say is very so popular in that space, because it's a new and emerging space. So we talked about wellness and well-being, and I'm really pleased that now doctors are leading in this area, which is usually dominated by nutritionists and naturopaths. So yeah. Do you want to do questions? We've got a lot of hands up.
Yeah, let's do some questions. Okay.
Yeah. So we've got. Do you want to unmute Maniac. We've got hands up.
We've got quite a few questions actually. So Maniac, have you got can you hear us? We've unmuted you. What's your question you'd like to ask? Okay. So I tell you what, let's stay with these questions, all right, okay?
Should we try one more?
Okay, let's do it.
Let's try one more. I'm going to try Denise. So, sorry for this, guys. So, unmute Denise. So, Denise, do you want to speak? No. Okay, fine. So, we're just going to go to the question. If anyone's got a question, please just type this down. I'm going to, how do you mute that again? Okay, fine.
So let's look at that last question, okay? So let's have a look. So first of all, here we go. Okay, I think we're doing all right.
Who is the Peds filmmaker? What's her name? Dimple Devadas. So that's Defina. Okay, so I think we've got no questions. I think we're good at the moment. Okay, so shall we go on? So there's been a lot of tech issues that we're very sorry about. If anyone does continue to have problems, then please do let me know that. So someone's actually asked, James Galati has asked, any job that is outside of the clinical setting in the case of doctors, nurses. So there is a whole range of things. But we'll go we'll speak a little bit about that later. So I'm going moving on to Owen. Okay, thanks very much, Urbana. So I've got just a couple of minutes, and I want to share with you a few tips and things that have I've seen along the way. And forgive me, none of this is rocket science, and forgive me if this is obvious. I hope it really is obvious. But what I found was that I would meet in the course of my recruitment career. I met lots of people who were really smart, really well qualified, lots of qualified accountants working with the big organizations, for example, and yet made the same mistakes over and over again. So what I want to do is I want to speak about a few things in the few minutes that I have around how you can position yourself as best as possible to be effective when your time comes to put your CV in front of a recruiter, to be viewed online on LinkedIn by a recruiter, to be in front of a recruiter in an interview or any kind of person in HR. So we've got a few minutes, and I'll just give you a few tips. So first of all, CVs. CVs are a passport, no more or less, so make yours count. Okay, so let's be very practical with this. Again, I'm not a doctor. My experience, though, of reviewing CVs from doctors, they tend to be very, very long. Let's remember, this is a passport to get you in the door, no more, no less. It is not about your entire life. You need to be pragmatic, you need to be strategic, all right? So what does that look like? Well, for me, there's three elements. I think there's the length of the CV, the structure, and the content, all right? So first of all, please, please, please keep your CV to a maximum of 2 pages long. Now, I know there's a lot of CVs for doctors that stretch 5, 6 pages. You're going to need to cut that down. And that means you're going to have to make choices about what you're going to choose to focus on, all right? So first of all, do not be tempted to just send in a CV that's 6 pages long. Let me paint a picture for you. Your average recruiter, and bearing in mind, despite what you may have heard, most recruiters are good people who work hard, who want to help their candidates. But your average recruiter, in the first instance, is going to spend a maximum of 1 minute on your CV, if you're lucky. You're probably going to get about 30 seconds, because this recruiter is looking through hundreds of CVs. So you want to make their life as easy as possible, okay? I speak from the heart as a former recruiter. Make their life easier. You will win points, believe me. So maximum of 2 pages, all right? Different ways to structure it, but I'd suggest have a brief introduction about yourself, a little paragraph. Be very clear about setting out what your key skills and achievements are. I'd suggest at the top, just below the paragraph introduction. So people often assume the recruiter will look through your job listings and your different things and connect the dots. Your recruiter hasn't got time to be doing that because they're in a very targeted environment. So don't help the recruiter out and list what your skills and achievements are, as well as your education and your jobs, all right?
Now, as I said before, you have to be strategic in your content. So that means that every single job that you apply for needs to have a slightly different bespoke CV, all right? A recruiter smells a mile off when there's a generic CV. It doesn't need a lot of change, tweaking here and there, all right?
I have to say, I mean, from a Medic Footprints perspective, we do recruit and we also advertise for jobs, and we keep an eye on what kind of CVs come through. And I would say the best CVs are people that actually take the time to look at the job description and fit their CVs accordingly. And that's from everything from the, you know, the short personal statement at the top to, you know, what their hobbies are. And they do keep it short and direct. So, yeah.
So just carrying on. Thank you, Urbana. So a bespoke CV for every application. I want to say, and I mean this in a non-patronizing way, as far as I'm concerned, there's no excuse for a generic CV for any job, all right? And it stands out. Your experienced recruiter knows that, all right? So a few other bits and pieces. Remember, so we've got a passport. It's to get you in the door. What I'd like to do is talk briefly about networking and LinkedIn specifically, all right? Very, very straightforward. Be active, be up to date, all right? So, as you know, LinkedIn is the preeminent networking site for any professional, I think, pretty much. Not forgetting, of course, Medic Footprints owner activities as a forum, all right? But remember, be active, be up to date with your profile. Any recruiter worth their salt is going to check you out the moment they see your CV.
I think there isn't much of an excuse not to be found on LinkedIn these days, regardless of what your background is, and that goes for doctors as well. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile and you are considering changing careers, I would strongly advise LinkedIn. If you're one of those creatives where LinkedIn actually doesn't matter, I would still create a LinkedIn profile. And we also have Simon Dobson from LinkedIn actually coming to speak to us at our conference about how to leverage your career using LinkedIn. So that should be quite interesting.
So again, put it out there, because remember, you also want to be presenting yourself in the format that a recruiter is going to be looking at. And any recruiter is on LinkedIn all day, every day. All right? So have a good picture up there. Take some time. So I recently left my job. I spent like a good couple of hours really making it look as good as it possibly could, all right? And clean up Facebook if there's anything embarrassing on there, all right? The recruiter will look for you there as well, guaranteed. So any sort of nights on the razzle from a few weeks ago, take them off. Okay?
Or from 10 years ago.
Or from 10 years ago from medical school, all right? So quickly, time's running out. Last thing, interviews. Be prepared, seize the moment. Again, really obvious, I know. This is your one chance to get face-to-face in front of that person, all right, who's going to take you forward or say thanks but no thanks, all right? So, again, it sounds so obvious. The number of people that came to me really prepared for interview, really smart, and really knowing why they wanted that job was quite a rare thing. So by doing your homework, you were already standing up from the crowd. And again, recruiters love great candidates. So why would you not want to make yourself a great candidate? So a few bits and pieces, a few tips. You know, demonstrate your understanding of the organization. When I went for my last job, I spent like half a day just going through the website. I would know everything I was to know. It was anal, but it got me a job. 2, you want to show them, remember, they've got maybe 5, 10 candidates to interview, all right, for this job, okay? Do a demo why you're the best candidate and practice that, all right? Have some questions up your sleeve. Again, the number of candidates I met who would say, do you have any questions? And they'd go, no, I'm fine. I'd be like, hang on, this is about your career and your life. So have some questions lined up, okay? Also, finally, work out your USPs. Why am I the best person for this job? It's a bit like asking a presidential candidate, why do I want to be president of the United States? Why do I want this job? And then why am I the best person for this job? Practice makes perfect, all right?
And make sure your answer is because I can do the job. It's not because I can do the job, because that's the worst. And people do say that. Yeah. And it really turns recruiters off, doesn't it?
So just finally, my last 20 seconds or so, remember, this is your moment. It is worth putting a bit of preparation in. When I got my last job working at that consultancy, that conflict resolution consultancy, I didn't get the job because I had the experience. I was very open with my boss to be and said, you will have people you're seeing that have experience I cannot compete with. But what you'll get from me is hard work, industry, passion, and gumption. And I showed that in my interview because I knew more about that organization. I knew more what was going on, I think, than anyone else. And that showed him that I was blooming hungry and up for the challenge. So I just say, put that time in. And just the last final thought, remember, yes, candidates apply for jobs. Jobs also get created for great candidates. So that's why invest in every conversation you have and all the relationships you're building up, because remember, guys, you never know where it's going to lead. On that note.
Yeah, thank you, Owen. I mean, that's a really important last point that you mentioned. It is about relationships when we're not talking about the UK conventional pathways. So you've moved away from us, Owen. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a lot of things to think about. Just to go back to our Alternative Careers event on the 27th, 28th of October. So as I mentioned before, this is an event that's designed for doctors who are looking to explore, who are looking to network, who are open-minded, who are looking to learn and to put well-being at the focus of what they're doing. The most value you'll get out of this, apart from the content and the speakers, are the people in the room. So this is one of the few events where you can get such a diverse group of doctors who are doing some really interesting things and are open to sharing that in a non-judgmental space. It's very difficult to do this at work. People don't have time. Your current networks, if you're a conventional medic, will only know what they know, which is conventional medicine. These aren't the people that you should be speaking to if you are looking to do something a little bit different, because it can be that sometimes when you go to people like that, they just don't really know what to do with that. And because I think the certain workplace environment tend to be quite protective of keeping things a certain way, you may get a lot of kind of obstacles in those kind of conversations, which may not be that helpful for you. So I would advise, if you are considering kind of really moving forward in your career, people that do attend this event do say it is a life-changing event, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, even for me, every year, you have to actually attend to actually really understand how inspirational it is. So for this event, as you know, we sold out of our 2-day tickets, and we've just this evening sold out of our 1-day tickets, the first tier. So that's just a Saturday only. But for everyone that attends and watches this webinar, because you've committed to spending an hour listening to us and kind of interacting with us, we would really be honoured if you could join us. So we'll offer you a discount on the current price, which is $179, which will take you back to the tier 2 price, and this is only available to you, and this is available on Friday the 15th. So don't worry about taking this down. We will send you a link with these details. So again, don't put it off any longer. If you're here, then that's a real indication that you are looking to do something else or something different, and this is really a chance that you have, because we only run this once a year, and every year I'm like, this is the last time. And
1 year she's going to mean that. All right.
1 year will actually mean that.
And also just say very, very quickly as well. So Avena said, which is great, and without trying to sort of labour the point, we had a couple of conversations with potential delegates who missed the 2-day. We made it clear that we were selling out, just a scarcity of tickets. Simply the building couldn't take any more for the 2-day tickets. And so after that, we had a number of conversations where people had said they'd been interested for a while, had left it, and then unfortunately they just missed out. And so we had to have a couple of quite challenging conversations where unfortunately we had no opportunity to give them that. So I would simply say, in a relaxed, down-to-earth way, that if you genuinely think this could be for you, and again it may not be for everyone, if you genuinely think it could be for you, I would just really encourage you to seize that moment and to buy tickets sooner rather than later, because we don't want to have more. We really want to avoid conversations whereby people aren't able to take part. So if you think this could be for you, I'd encourage you to seize the day. Thank you.
Okay, so so these are some Twitter feeds just from last year, but we're going to have a Q&A now. So I want to go through some of the questions that weren't technical and some of the questions that were submitted. If you have any questions as well, now is the time to ask it. So please type in the question box there. So I'm going to go with Cyrus Siddiqui, who's asked, how necessary to move in the right direction for you? Do you feel a career coach is when you're at an impasse? And I would say that's essential. It's absolutely essential. What you really need is someone who is impartial, that can guide you. And just to be clear, the difference between career coaches and careers advisors and mentors, does anyone know the difference? I mean, the main difference between those is a career coach is someone who will be able to allow you to actually make decide what your own pathway is and really tease out things that are actually already there. They should not be telling you what to do, so you won't be, they won't give you a whole list of things. It's for you to kind of really kind of get to the point where you know what you want to do. Careers advisors will probably give you a bit more of a list of what to do, and mentors are people that are probably in a position that you aspire to get to at some point in the future, and those are people that will try and give you introductions into areas that you may not have the networks or connections yet. And all three are actually quite important. And at our event, we do have career coaches and mentors available. So we do encourage you to network. Don't ask me again about that. So any further questions from people here? So some of our next questions include, is it possible to return to medicine in the future if I take time out to look for alternatives? And that is from one of the questions that was submitted to us. As you've seen by one of the case studies, it is absolutely possible to return to medicine, even if there may be some obstacles in actually getting back into it. I know Lafina was told that she needed to do a bit more clinical medicine before she was able to get back onto the GP rotation, which she did successfully. So there is always a way, and don't let anyone tell you that any different. I've heard multiple stories of doctors who have left their training programs and only to rejoin it. So don't worry about that. What are good non-clinical ways to support part-time study, particularly if not based in London? There is a raft of things that I couldn't even start with. We do have an article on our website about top non-clinical ways to earn an income on the side on our website, but you can also find a lot more information at our alternative careers event. If you're a dentist, so a dentist at Alternative Career Options for Dentists, I would say that everything we've discussed today is completely relevant to dentists, vets, anyone with BSc or medical students. So don't think that you're sideline because you come from a dentistry background. You're still very highly regarded in the non-medical and medical world. So for non-clinical people, what, if anything, do you miss about clinical medicine? So that is a really interesting question. So I would say, I mean, I'm actually in clinical medicine at the moment, kind of slightly, but I have moved away from surgery. One of the things I miss, I would say, I don't actually miss anything. Actually, I really have to think about that one. I think it's simply because I've actively chosen to go down a certain pathway. I guess on occasion I might miss the continuity of care with certain patients, but not enough because I really enjoy what I do now and I don't look back. You might have some other people saying something different, but that's how I feel. And I am still kind of in a hybrid position. So it's another question. If you leave medicine after F1 with a GMC registration, can you come back, and what are the rules? I suggest you check the GMC website about that, but I'm pretty sure you can come back. I think it may mean, it depends on whether you decide to keep your license or not, but double check with the GMC, but again, should not be a problem. I think it also depends on how much time you take out after your F1 and returning to your F1. And so we've got Rebecca Holden asking a question, where can we look for alternative roles for doctors? So that's one of the things that we do in Medic Footprints. So we do advertise on roles for doctors on our website, which we post out to our group on a regular basis. But as I said, there may not be you may want to be, I don't know, a car designer, and we don't have any car designer jobs. But that's why it's really important for you to find out where do they advertise for those kind of jobs and meet people who are car designers and see if that's something that they can kind of help create for you. So it is about the networks, really, that's quite important.
I've got a question from Rebecca Bowers. Hi, Rebecca. Great to have you with us. Did all of your case samples set out with the intention of looking for alternative careers when they were at medical school, or was it an opportunity that they gained as they went along, or as a result of frustration within the current roles?
I think a lot of these came out of frustration from their current roles, and I mean, I think most people who have an idea early on, they either decide to do something about it or completely ignore it for the rest of their career, or decide at some point, or have decided at some point, you know, in their career path that they're going to stop and change. But I think those case studies were people that had gone through the career treadmill and then stepped off it when it was a bit too much for them. And I can say I've kind of been on and off the treadmill on multiple occasions, and I don't think I'm actually on a treadmill, but I'm still in a training program. But I'm making that work for me, and I enjoy what I do because I've chosen to do that. So yeah. So just a few more questions. I'm curious as to what other careers doctors pursue and what tends to hold some people back from making the leap. And I think that's a really common question. And I think what holds most people back is fear. And going back to the Catherine Zeta-Jones example, entrapment. So fear that whatever they do, they'll get it wrong, they will fail, they'll become ostracized from their current networks, and there'll be no going back. And all of those are, you know, they're normal fears. They're normal fears. But the reality is, if you're really unhappy in what you're doing now, you know, I think I would be fearful of what could happen in the future with your current work if you remain to be as unhappy as you are, or what will happen to you as an individual, and what will happen to your health. So yeah, I think that is the main thing that holds doctors back from actually taking that leap. I think the reality is you don't actually have to take a leap. You can straddle, you can take a bit of time out, you can go back. I mean, you know, it's not a matter of just giving up something. It's a matter of having that space and time and being able to explore. So we've only got a few minutes left. So for that few minutes, we're going to finish with our final poll. So the question is, what will you commit to doing moving forward in your career? So what will you commit to doing and moving forward in your current career? So let's launch the poll.
So select one or more of the following: seek out new networking opportunities to put myself forward, explore new career opportunities, stay curious and experiment. Oh, I love it. Identify ways to use my passions to design a career I love, and secure the support I need for my own well-being and my career. And just finally, Abena, come to ACW 2017, of course.
You can choose more than one option. So let's try and get everyone voting this time. So we're just over halfway. That's brilliant.
Here we go. We're going 5 seconds, people. Let's do this.
Can choose more than one option.
3, 2, 1. And we're going to close the poll there. Thank you very, very much. So 83% of the vote in. And so 80% of you said to explore new career opportunities. 72% identify ways to use my passions. 64% seek out new networking opportunities. 56 said secure the support I need for my own well-being. 52% said come to ACW 2017, of course. All right, thank you very much for that.
Okay, awesome. So finally, I just wanted to mention, going back to the whole well-being issue, I don't know if anyone recognises this young lady who really tragically took her own life last year. She's a doctor in Devon, and So some of the reasons that postulated why she did so was it was amongst the junior doctor's contract, but also she was considering leaving the profession, but really didn't know where to go, what support to get, and didn't know what to do. And unfortunately, this is not unique. There are too many suicides amongst doctors, essentially in very similar positions, because they feel trapped and there isn't really the support systems available for them when they need it in their day-to-day work. So this year, for the first time, we are going to be holding the Dr. Rose Polge Wellbeing Award for any company or individual who has demonstrated excellent support for doctors and their well-being. So it could be an organisation, private or public, or it could be an individual who's done a lot of work with doctors. We really ask you to nominate that, and we'll announce that later on. So the award will be given out at our event, and it will be given out by Mark Polge, who is a GP and is Rose's father. So just wanted to, this is the first time we've actually announced this, and it's really important because this is essentially what we do. We campaign for doctors' well-being, so that this does not happen again. And so, as finally mentioned, you can still get your tickets, and we'll send you a link if you are interested in coming along for our event. And we sincerely hope to see you there. So, thank you, Owen.
Thank you, Abena.
Right, and have a great evening all. And if you do have any further questions, queries, you name it, then please feel free to send us a line, and we can get back to you. Oh, sorry, we'll just do one more question with Buff from Rebecca Holden. Can you guys give us some tips on how to make the most of the ACW event? I would say plan ahead, number one. Keep an open mind. Speak to as many people as you can, because you never know those connections, which connections you'll make and how they will influence your next steps. And yeah, just realize you can't see and do everything because there's too much going on. So always try something new. I think we're very good at going to what we know, but I would always recommend try something you're not so familiar with, because you could be surprised. How about you, Owen?
I'd say, yeah, push us. I would say actually, since you have stamina. So maybe after lunch you start to get a bit tired, and it's easy to kind of let the networking go and just and sort of float along with it. I'd say really seize the opportunity to make the most of every conversation, because this is such an efficient way. With over 350 doctors, well over 50 speakers, it's very rare you're going to have such a range of people in your space under one roof all at the same time. So I'd really encourage you to make it as efficient an event as you can, and speak to as many people as you can, because you never know where it's going to lead. That's been my experience. So good luck, and we'd love to see you there.
All right, thanks all, and good night.
Good night. Take care.